We are coming on the air with a now deadly storm threatening millions up and down the East Coast. States of emergency in parts of New York, New Jersey tonight ahead of what's expected to be an evening that brings multiple inches of rain. We've got a reporter posted up at Philly's airport with how the storm is affecting holiday travel. Plus, a new inflection point in the war between Israel and Hamas, how the U.S. and other global leaders are putting pressure on Israel tonight to scale back the intense bombardment inside Gaza. Hallie's on the ground for us in Tel Aviv. Then breaking news coming into us tonight. A New York jury convicting Marvel actor Jonathan Majors of assault and harassment. What the verdict means for the once rising star. And the investigation into the driver who accidentally slammed into a vehicle that was part of the president's motorcade. What we know about that tonight. Plus, remember all those crazy smash and grab videos? The retail industry blames organized retail crime, but experts say that's not the entire story. We're going to explain in tonight's original. Hey, everybody, I'm Yasmin in for Hallie, who's on assignment in Israel, and we're coming on air with even more impacts from this powerful storm that just turned deadly, with millions up and down the East Coast underwater and in the dark tonight, dealing with the tail end of this storm. They're getting hit with lots of rain, really strong winds. You see here a tow truck having to rescue a car stuck on a flooded New Jersey street. Still, 7 million people are under flood alerts as some rivers are quickly flowing above flood stages. And we're learning 2 people in North Carolina died yesterday as they tried to help a car that hydroplaned and crashed off an interstate. Another car then also hydroplaned while going fast, lost control, then hit and killed both of them. Tonight, states of emergency are in place in some New York and New Jersey counties. Several school districts closed in those states. By the end of today, 2 inches of rain falling in every single East Coast state. In New York, scaffolding literally blown over in what looks like a parking lot, coming crashing down on cars as 5 million are still under wind alerts. And these high winds are also bringing down trees, creating a real issue as they fall on power lines. Crews working to get the lights on as fast as possible. With nearly 800,000 people across the East Coast in the dark right now. And airports hit too, more than 500 cancellations and 3,400 delays at critical times when people are jump-starting holiday travel. Plus, further south, where this storm hit first, people now working to clean up the damage as homes were destroyed and streets were flooded. We have meteorologist Bill Karen standing by with the forecast. Want to go first, though, to George Solis, who's at Philadelphia International Airport. George, good to talk to you. What is the main concern here right now with these power outages and continued travel delays?
Yeah, there's a multitude of concerns, obviously, when you talk about these power outages. As the storm moves out of the way, we're getting some colder temperatures in right now. So people that rely on electricity for their space heaters or just don't have any heating right now, obviously that's going to play a major concern here at the nation's airports. As you mentioned, you have more than 3,500 delays, more than 500 cancellations, people trying to get to their holiday destinations. They're trying to get a jump start on it. Right now, we're forecasting somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.8 million that are supposed to be expected to travel, through the nation's airports up through the holiday. That's a lot of people. When you have the damage, the effects of these storms as they've been moving up through the Northeast here, obviously a lot of people impacted by that now. Some of them dealing with cleanup, some of them dealing with roads and traffic that they now have to adjust through. It's obviously a headache that a lot of people were hoping to avoid as we approach this holiday season, this busy holiday travel period. Here in Philadelphia, we spoke to some people who had to navigate some of this treacherous terrain earlier. Here's what they had to say.
Woke up, it was raining crazy, but we're still going for her birthday. We're excited. The floods was crazy. We had to take different routes through the city to get here, but nevertheless, we're here.
Yeah, the good news here is that the rain has stopped, but obviously the concern now is keeping an eye on the Schuylkill River, specifically here in Philadelphia, as it is expected to crest. Some roads we know have already been closed down in certain areas because of the flooding. So even though this system has moved out, obviously there's still some impacts and some ripple effects that we're still feeling, Yasmin.
Let's talk about this Southwest Airlines settlement, paying a historic $140 million fine by the federal government for that travel disaster last December. Wondering if there's extra pressure now during the holiday season for other airlines.
Yeah, certainly. If you will, the Southwest Airlines now the poster child for that egregious mishap of last year where so many people weren't able to get their flights. So the Department of Transportation clearly making an example of them with this historic penalty, the $140 million. The airline, for their part, are saying, look, we've done everything that we can to make sure this does not happen again. We've added more computers, better equipment, more machinery, more staffing to avoid a repeat. So a lot of eyes, of course, on the airline right now, not just Southwest, but obviously every airline, especially when you have a system like this that moves through the region to make sure they keep people on time and get them safely to their destinations. Yasmin.
George Solis for us. Thank you, George. Appreciate it. Last but not least, though, I want to go to meteorologist Bill Cairns, never least, Bill Cairns. Nonetheless, it seems like this thing is starting to move out, right? However, it has left a lasting impact. A lot of people hit here.
So we have the people that dealt with the power outages, and they're now heading into the dark now that the sun has set. And we're also dealing with rivers that haven't even peaked yet. Some have crested already. Damage has already been done, but some additional damage will be done throughout the overnight, even as the storm races to the north. The worst weather right now is in northern Vermont, northern New Hampshire, and in Maine. This is where it has poured, but it's also seen warm temperatures and melting snow. This is the area that actually had a snowpack. And we've heard about roads being washed out. One town in Vermont's been evacuated. We also saw a mudslide, and you're saying it's right around Route 2 there as you head northwards, about the northern half of the state, just a bit north of Stowe. That's the area that we're seeing some of the worst of the weather concerns. And you notice these flash flood warnings in New Hampshire, too. Conway to North Conway. This is the Saco River that we're concerned with. And heading to Rangeley and Rumford, also some flash flood warnings. These will be expiring soon. Hartford and Worcester, you'll probably be eliminated from the flood watch. As far as the rivers go, every dot you see here is a river that's in flood stage. So it's a lot of them. Everywhere with the maroon is where we have flood warnings for all of these rivers. So you go from the southern tier near the Binghamton area, almost all the rivers here in central and northern New Jersey. Connecticut's got rivers cresting too. You get the idea. The wind damage primarily is over with. We saw gusts to 68 miles per hour. I mean, that's like a strong tropical storm in areas like Boston. Bangor, Maine had a wind gust of 67 miles per hour. Right now, we're in the 20 to 40 mile per hour range. So hopefully we're not losing power in too many more areas. So that's good, Yasmin.
So from east, I want to go west because it looks like we're getting some weather out there as well.
Yeah, this is kind of the next storm, and this one's going to be a slow mover, so it's going to stay in the west for much of this week. We haven't had a lot of, El Nino-ish type wet weather and snow in areas of the west, so this is just some scattered showers. But as we head through the middle of the week, especially as we go through Tuesday night, definitely Wednesday, we're going to see the storm system slowly heading towards the coast. And for the first time, really, this, rainy season, we'll call it. When you start in November, that's kind of their water year in Southern California. Los Angeles and the mountains outside are going to get significant rainfall, as much as 1 to 2 with maybe even 3 inches. So that's good. We do need the wet weather. We haven't had a lot this winter in this region, but the snow levels are very high. Those ski resorts like Mammoth and other areas, they'll get some snow, but not a lot. This is mostly a rain system for them too, as you know, a lot of people are going to be struggling to get that white Christmas. It is warm from coast to coast.
But we are praying for it, and there's always a miracle.
There's always a chance.
Christmas miracle. Bill Cairns for us. Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's go overseas now, everybody, where we're seeing a new inflection point in the war in Gaza, with Israel facing even more pressure now to scale back the intense bombardment it's leading inside Gaza. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin making a key trip to Tel Aviv today, underscoring what he's calling the need to protect civilians from harm as the death toll in Gaza nears another grim record, with close to 20,000 killed, according to the territory's health officials.
Democracies are stronger and more secure when we uphold the law of war. And as I've said, protecting Palestinian civilians in Gaza is both a moral duty and a strategic imperative.
And it's not just the Secretary of Defense. The CIA director meeting with Israeli and Qatari officials in Poland today in major talks for another potential hostage deal and humanitarian ceasefire, a U.S. official telling NBC News. As we're seeing mounting outrage inside Israel. Look at this. Protests in the streets of Tel Aviv today. People there demanding Israel's government to do more to secure the release of these hostages, after that country's military revealed it mistakenly killed 3 Israeli hostages inside Gaza over the weekend. Hallie Jackson joining us now on the ground for us in Tel Aviv. Hal, good to talk to you. Talk us through this. We saw SecDef, Secretary of Defense Austin, talking earlier today on his trip to Israel. What more did we learn from him?
Hey, Yaz, it's good to see you too, friend. Listen, interesting visit here and a high-profile visit from the defense secretary at a really important time right now with this war in Gaza after that terror attack on October 7th. Because you saw publicly the defense secretary come out and make very clear that the U.S. supports Israel in its war, in its broader aims here. And that has been a message that the Biden administration has been delivering now really since October 7th, since the minutes after that attack happened. There is also an undercurrent, as multiple sources tell NBC News privately, that the Biden administration wants Israel to move to a less intense and more targeted phase of this war at some point, right? And that is because of what you just referenced, that humanitarian crisis that is getting worse every single day in Gaza. So the defense secretary coming out, speaking, again, reiterating that support. But a senior defense official says one of the key goals here was to drill down on the specifics, on the metrics of what Israel is actually going to need to see operationally, tactically on the ground to move to a different transition, to transition to a different phase of this war, if you will. There's also something else that the defense secretary is doing, because remember, he is not just in Israel. He's been to other countries in the region as well. And it's happening against the backdrop of major security risks in the Red Sea. And by that, I mean these attacks by Iranian-backed Houthis in the Red Sea that have created these conditions where shipping companies now are deciding that they are going to pause their tankers, pause their ships, because they don't want to go through. They're concerned about this because of these attacks. So the defense secretary is now coming out, and he is launching this international initiative along with a slew of other countries to try to get a handle on this issue here that seems to be picking up steam every single day. So a lot going on in the region, Yasmin, as there has been here, obviously, for months.
So I also want to talk about the protests. I know, Hallie, over the weekend, you were out in the protests talking to folks there as well. There's a lot of outrage, especially over the 3 hostages that were accidentally killed by the IDF. Walk me through what you heard and what you saw.
Definitely. And I didn't want to step on you there, just because one of the things that we had heard was people are frustrated. The people that we talked to at these protests, these family members of hostages, people who support those family members, coming out and saying, hey, time is running out because look at what happened, as we learned at the end of last week. 3 Israelis killed by their own military, even holding white flags, even having a sign that said SOS, help, hostages here, essentially. I'm paraphrasing here. People are saying, the folks that we're talking to, that this creates a level of urgency here to get to some kind of a deal, to get to some kind of negotiation to get these hostages out. One of the questions we had was, what do the family members of those 3 hostages killed think? I had an opportunity, Yasmin, to speak with 2 of them today. First was the father of Alon Shamriz. We went to the kibbutz where he's staying here in Israel on the 2nd day of sitting Shiva. And his dad said that when he saw those signs, he recognized his son's handwriting. He says that was his son who wrote those SOS signs. Apparently, the IDF says in leftover food there. You can see Alon all the way to the right. I want to play for you what his dad told me when I asked him what his message is to the government right now, to give you a sense. Watch. What is your message to the government?
I'm going to say this government, you murdered my son twice. You let the Hamas take my son on October 7th. And you killed my son December 14. They cannot serve us. They don't deserve us as a country, as a community. They are not our leaders. They're thinking only on themselves. They are not thinking about the hostages. They are not thinking about us.
I think that gives you a sense of sort of where he's at, how he's feeling right now. You're also seeing on the left side of your screen, Samer Al-Talalka. I went to visit his mother as she was also greeting visitors at her home. We were sort of inside on a couch. People were coming. And one of the people who visited was an Israeli politician who showed up to offer condolences, and she rejected them. She said, I cannot forgive anybody. I will never forgive anyone. She said that she has lost hope for herself. She still holds out hope for the release of other hostages, but she describes this sort of living hell that she's in, where she's just replaying in her head again and again the final moments of her son's life, the calls for help, the white flag, getting essentially shirtless so that the Israeli military could see that they didn't have any weapons on them, essentially, doing everything they possibly could in order to save themselves, and then ultimately killed by their own military here. And so I think the frustration that you're hearing from some of these families is in some ways indicative of an undercurrent of anger that has spilled over in those protests that we've seen here in Tel Aviv. Yes.
Hallie, I can't tell you how important it is to hear those voices, and we're so appreciative that you were able to bring that to us. We're going to see you back here later this hour for more of your reporting from the region. You can also catch more of Hallie's reporting over on Nightly News tonight, 6:30 Eastern, where we get your local NBC station. All right, some breaking news, everybody. Late tonight, we're just learning that Marvel is dropping actor Jonathan Majors, a source with direct knowledge telling NBC. It comes after a New York jury found him guilty today of assault and harassment of his ex-girlfriend in a split verdict. The case revolves around an alleged incident in March. Majors' ex says he physically assaulted her in the backseat of a car, causing several injuries. Majors has maintained that he's innocent here. His sentencing will be in February. I want to bring in our entertainment correspondent, Chloe Mellis, to talk more about that. What does this verdict mean for Majors now going forward?
Here's the thing. There were 4 misdemeanors. He was convicted on 2. It was a split verdict from the jury. And again, it's unclear if he's going to face any jail time. We spoke to one of our legal experts last week as this trial was going on, Danny Savalos, and he was saying it's probably unlikely he'd face jail time because these are misdemeanors and probably more like probation. But what is on the line is clearly his career. NBC News confirming just moments ago that Disney no longer plans to include him in 2 of their biggest upcoming films in their Marvel's franchise. They have cut him from Avengers, the Kang Dynasty.
Wow.
And this is a source close to Disney. Disney's not commenting on the record, I should say. And 2027's upcoming film, Secret Wars. I mean, this is a massive thing because he is a star that was on the rise.
Yeah.
And he'd starred in Creed 3. He had starred in Ant-Man and the Wasp. And I do want to tell you a little bit about what his attorney, Priya Chaudhry, told NBC News this afternoon. I'll read you part what she says. She says, "It is clear that the jury did not believe Grace Jabari," now that's his ex-girlfriend, "of what happened that night in the SUV because they found that Mr. Majors did not intentionally cause any injuries to her." So remember, there were 2 misdemeanors of assault. He was convicted on the one that said that he did not intend to harm her. And then they just go on to say that he has faith in the process and looks forward to clearing his name.
Wow, a real fall from grace there in this case. Chloe Mellis for us. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Chloe. All right, so in the last couple of hours, a parenting vlogger who once had millions of subscribers online emotionally pleading guilty to multiple counts of child abuse in a Utah courtroom.
To count 6, aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony.
With my deepest regret and sorrow for my family and my children, guilty.
Police arrested Ruby Franke, a mother of 6, and her business partner back in August. You're seeing police body camera footage of that arrest here. They found one of Franke's kids with open wounds after escaping from the business partner's home. Police discovered another one of Franke's kids described as, quote, emaciated and malnourished at the same home. Once all of these details of this case came out, it blew up online. People were analyzing Franke's old content to see if they had missed any warning signs of abuse. It also started back up the conversation on legal protections for child influencers here in the United States. Steve Patterson joining me now with more on this. Steve, if you will, walk us through what happened in court today and where this goes next.
Well, you basically saw it there, Yasmin. Very, very quick affair, maybe all of 5-10 minutes or so. The judge asking if she understood the charges and if what she would plead to the charges, and she gave her a little spiel, and then she pled guilty, just as we expected she would, because she said essentially through attorneys that this was coming, that she would plead guilty to aggravated felony child abuse, and that's exactly what happened. It happened in a little bit of a different way than we expected because of the plea deal that was in place. She pled guilty to 4 of the 6 charges. The other 2 charges, of course, dropped. Next, of course, his sentencing expected to take place in late February. She could see some jail time based upon what we know about the plea agreement. That could shift in a different direction, but we aren't sure yet. It all really depends on her business partner, Jody Hildebrand, somebody that was in league with her for a little while, creating content on her own as well as with Ruby Franke. And how much of the plea deal has to do with her testifying against Jody, because, you know, just based upon what we know with the rhetoric in that statement that came up before what we heard today, it may have a lot to do with that. So we'll have to wait and see at this point. Yasmin?
Before the arrest, Steve, even happened, viewers had been criticizing some of what they were seeing in her parenting videos.
Yeah, look, I mean, this was a woman who was known, infamous, famous for these harsh punishments. And I think a lot of people kind of globbed onto that. She had like 2.5, 2.3 million viewers, over 1 billion views if you added it all together. And a lot of people sort of bought into this harsh love kind of style of parenting. But some of the things that people were seeing and analyzing, and of course, as YouTube being sort of the snake that eats itself, the sort of cottage industry of analyzing her videos popped up after she started becoming accused of all of this, because they would see punishments like one kid did something wrong, so he loses bedroom privileges. Turns out he's sleeping on a beanbag for 7 months. There's threats of cutting her daughter's doll's head off. There's threats of Santa never coming to Christmas. Things that seem kind of cruel and unusual and more than just your sort of take on what tough love should mean, that I think a lot of people started to notice, and then a lot of people started to break down and wonder, did we miss the warning signs? Were they there all along? In fact, there was a change.org petition back in the day that actually sent the police to her house to try to investigate something that was going on that somebody had heard in one of these YouTube videos. So it was very pervasive, and a lot of people sort of knew about her before the accusations even started.
All right, Steve Patterson for us. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. A Delaware man is facing DUI charges tonight after he allegedly crashed his car into a vehicle that was part of President Biden's motorcade. Look at this. It all went down last night. The president leaving his re-election headquarters when he and his Secret Service detail were startled by a loud crash. Watch it. Secret Service surrounded the car with their guns drawn. You can see the driver in the front seat with his hands up. The Secret Service put out a statement basically saying that there was never any threat to the president or the first lady. Want to go to NBC's Aaron Gilchrist, who's standing by for us with more on this. Aaron, what do we know about how investigators concluded this was an accident and not something targeted?
So let me pull back the curtain a little bit, Yasmin, on how the president is protected. The Secret Service is actually a couple of different divisions. There are uniformed Secret Service police officers who protect facilities, essentially, and then you have Secret Service agents. They are assigned to protect individuals. The president has a detail that is larger than some you might see in other instances, and their primary job is to protect the president, not necessarily to investigate incidents that may surround his motorcade. So they turned this over to the local police department, Wilmington Police, and they were able to figure out that this was a traffic accident. This was a collision of that nature. I'll back up a little bit and explain what happened here. The president was having dinner with his campaign staff in Wilmington last night. As he was leaving, a few steps behind the First Lady, walking toward his SUV, he turned to take a question from the gathered travel media pool that was with him. And as he was doing that, you heard this crash, this car slamming into an SUV, a Secret Service SUV that was blocking the road deliberately to protect the president, obviously. And the president turns and looks, and then you hear that car's engine rev. And I think that's the moment when you see these agents grab the president and move him more swiftly toward his SUV to get in. The agents surround the car. There's a guy inside with his hands up. They're trying to figure out what happened here, obviously. The president went on. They got him in the car. He continued on to his house in Wilmington. The local police come in. They were able to investigate through the night. Early this morning, they told us, we'll put up a statement here so you can see exactly what they had to say. The Wilmington police saying that they have charged a 46-year-old Wilmington man with driving a vehicle under the influence of alcohol. This was an accidental collision, the police department says. And at this point, we can tell you, Yasmin, the president was back out today in Wilmington. He went to church this morning, and he also went to lunch and shopping. And so the Secret Service did its job. The president was never in any danger, but certainly an unusual incident to see involving the president of the United States.
And thankful everybody is okay and nobody was hurt in that accident. Aaron Gilchrist for us, thank you. Still to come, everybody, Taiwan says the Chinese balloons are back. Why that's really putting the country on edge later in the 5 things. Up first, though, a shocking move out of the Vatican. The latest attempt by the Pope to make the church a more welcoming place. That's next. Pope Francis today issuing a landmark document that will allow Catholic priests to bless same-sex couples as long as the blessings are not part of regular church rituals for liturgies, making things more inclusive, but still upholding its ban on gay marriage. It's a radical change in Vatican policy, stating that people should not be subject to, quote, an exhaustive moral analysis to receive a sign of God's love and mercy. The document is the latest gesture of outreach from a pope who has tried to make the Catholic Church more welcoming to LGBTQ plus Catholics without changing moral doctrine. Claudio Lavanga has more.
On Monday, the Vatican's Department for Church Doctrine issued an official statement saying that from now on, Catholic priests are allowed to bless same-sex couples who ask for a blessing, but on condition the blessing doesn't resemble a marriage, which in the eyes of the Catholic Church is still a sacrament that can be shared only by a man and a woman. Now, the document lists those conditions very clearly. It says that the blessing cannot take place at the same time as a civil union and cannot be accompanied by rituals typical of marriages like clothing, gestures, and words. Still, despite all of those conditions, this is a major outreach by the Catholic Church to the LGBTQ plus community and a major shift in its approach, considering that only 2 years ago, the same office at the Vatican banned blessings of same-sex unions because it said you cannot bless sin. And yet this is not entirely a surprise because at the beginning of October this year, Pope Francis said in response to a letter by 5 conservative cardinals who challenged him to clarify the Church's doctrine on homosexuality, he said that he believed blessings of same-sex couples should be allowed, provided it's not mistaken with an approval of marriage. But the publication of the document by the Department for Church Doctrine on Monday means that now that seismic move by the Catholic Church is official.
All right, let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, Michigan State University trustees approved settlements today with the families of the 3 students killed during a mass shooting earlier this year on campus. The school did not release the amounts of the settlements. 5 other students were hurt when a gunman opened fire in February. Number 2, Taiwan's defense ministry saying 2 suspected Chinese weather balloons flew across the Taiwan Strait on Sunday, but stayed to the north of Taiwan. It is the second time this month Taipei has reported the balloons nearby. Taiwan is on high alert for Chinese activities ahead of its January presidential election. Number 3, Apple is pausing online sales of some of its popular smartwatches days before Christmas, because of a patent dispute. It applies to the Apple Watch Series 9 and Ultra 2. The International Trade Commission found that Apple violated patents related to a blood oxygen sensor on some versions of the watch. The White House has 60 days to review the ruling. We got number 4 for you. The Quaker Oats Company is recalling more than 90 products, including certain granola bars and granola cereals, due to a possible salmonella risk. Affected products were sold in all 50 states, Puerto Rico, and Guam. Quaker says it has not received any confirmed reports of illnesses. Customers with the affected products can contact the company for a refund. Number 5, an evening dress worn by the late Princess Diana has sold for $1.1 million. That is 11 times its estimate, breaking the record price for one of her gowns at auction. She wore the black and blue ballerina-length evening dress for at least 2 formal public appearances. Later on in the show, why 2 new grandparents had to turn their car into their daughter's delivery room right on the streets of Southern California. That's in the local. Up first, though, dozens of kids were showing up at the doctor with high levels of lead in their systems. Hear from the parents who were shocked to find out applesauce might be the culprit. Tonight, we are hearing from the first time from parents about how they found out that applesauce was a likely cause of their kids getting really sick with lead poisoning. After discovering that their young kids had super high levels of lead in their system, families across the country scrambled to find the source. Everything from searching for lead pipes in their homes that could have been contaminating their water or any traces of lead paint. Then an FDA warning and nationwide recall on Wana Banana's cinnamon applesauce packets that so many young children snack on gave them some answers.
It's shameful that, a company would intentionally alter a product that they know is going to be ingested by the population solely to make a few extra dollars. And in this case, I think it's shameful that they would do that if they did it, and that it went to children.
Wanabana voluntarily called for the recall of their products and have been complying with the FDA. Health and medical reporter Berkeley Lovelace Jr. joins me now to talk more about this. Berkeley, thanks for joining us on this. The FDA saying it's possible the packets were contaminated on purpose. What do we know about this?
Yeah, so the FDA thinks that this could possibly be food fraud, also known as economically motivated adulteration. And so basically, this is when a company or supplier will add a cheaper ingredient to a product to like bulk it or enhance it. One example that the FDA gave was like when they used lead-based dyes in spices to give it a different color. And so this is just one theory that the FDA has. They haven't confirmed it yet, but this is kind of where they're leaning towards. Other things that they're looking at is whether or not the soil was contaminated or the water also was contaminated. Sometimes pipes are old and contain lead. And so that could possibly be a route of it. But at this time, those sources they're saying are probably unlikely because the lead content was so high.
Have they all been successfully pulled from the shelves? And I'm wondering what the FDA is doing about it to stop this from ever happening again.
Yeah, so the FDA says all the products have been recalled. In October, they pulled the brand name products from the shelves, and then in November, they pulled 2 other products from the shelves that also were made by the same company. And so at this time, the FDA says other flavors that the company sells that do not contain cinnamon, they do not believe that they're at contamination risk. Right now, the FDA is saying that they're taking this kind of very seriously. If you take a look at the numbers that break down across the cases across the country, there are more than 65 cases of kids with lead poisoning potentially linked to these products across 28 states. And so they're still investigating these cases as well. The FDA currently does not provide a broad limit for lead in foods, but in January they did propose some limits for food or for lead in baby foods, although those limits are not expected to be finalized until 2025. And then I'm also told there is legislation in the Senate that is expected to be released soon that would also propose limits on baby food.
All right, Berkeley Lovelace for us. Thank you, Berkeley. Appreciate it. NBC covers hundreds of stories each day, and because it's tough to read, watch, or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment that we call The Local. Out of our Northeast Bureau, police say a 37-year-old woman is responsible for stabbing 4 people at a Boston hotel and are charging her with several offenses, including assault and battery by a dangerous weapon. The victims were hospitalized and are expected to survive. Police have not said what they think led to the attack. Also from our Northeast Bureau, it looks like Baltimore Orioles fans can breathe a sigh of relief. The Maryland Stadium Authority today approving an extension of the team's lease at Camden Yards that was supposed to expire at the end of the year. We told you last week that there was some concern as the deadline crept closer, but now it looks like the team will be there for at least another 3 decades. And out of our Western Bureau, it was a family affair on the roads of Los Angeles this weekend for a woman about to have a baby. She was on her way to the hospital to deliver when she realized the baby was not going to wait until they got there. So her dad pulled off the freeway and called 911, and her mom, who was in the backseat of the car, helped her with the delivery. Baby, mom, dad, grandma, and grandpa are all doing just fine. And that's family. All right, some news just breaking to us in the last couple of minutes. Texas Governor Greg Abbott signing a bill into law, allowing state and local law enforcement to arrest migrants coming into the country illegally. Critics saying the law could lead to mass detentions of migrants. And it all sets up a huge battle with the White House over the law's constitutionality. Some are also concerned it would overwhelm Texas's legal system. Federal agents encountering 38,000 migrants in just one section of Texas's broader border, I should say, with Mexico during the month of October. It's set to go into effect in March. All right, it is time to get to the backstory, our behind-the-scenes look at how a story comes together and how it fits into our bigger picture. New details about a minor who died in a poultry plant accident in Mississippi. The company confirming to NBC News that the 16-year-old got the job by using the identity of a 32-year-old. Duvon Perez, who you see here, died after getting sucked into equipment that accidentally turned on at a Marjack poultry plant. Perez's family didn't respond to a request for comment on the use of an adult's identity, and Marjack blames the hiring of the teen on a staffing company that supplies workers to the plant. It is a case that highlights the pervasive issue of illegal child labor here in the U.S. that NBC News has been looking into for a year now. And all the reporting is in a new documentary called Slaughterhouse Children. Here's a look and a warning that some of what you're about to see is graphic.
Things happen in a plant that adults aren't comfortable seeing. You walk through the plant, you can't walk through it without getting animal parts on you or blood all over you.
Desde muy principio, cuando entro en la puerta principal, veo el pollo, la sangre, las tripas.
You walk into the building, but the operation's enormous. And as we walked, I was just like, that's a kid. That's a kid.
Wow. And Julia Ainsley is one of the reporters who worked on this story. Julia, thank you so much for bringing this to us. We appreciate it. I want to talk about how it came to you. Your team and you based this documentary on reporting in 2 countries, 6 states, dozens of interviews after looking at thousands and thousands of pages of records. How did this start for you?
This started when we became aware of a Labor Department raid in a place called Grand Island, Nebraska. The raid took place in October, and they made news about this around this time last year, actually. I remember it was right before the holidays. We thought this needs to be looked into, and it made it a priority. And Lars Strickler, a producer I worked with on this, we noticed that raid started with 23 children, and then that same company that was responsible for cleaning slaughterhouses in Nebraska, they ended up finding that there were over 100 children working for that one company. We start looking at that one company, that one state, it expands, especially because we were able to talk to officials here in Washington who said, don't just look there, keep going. And then we also had people coming to us, people on LinkedIn, social media, people who said, I have a connection to this, in part because one of our stories that we first broke here on News Now went viral on YouTube. Within a day, there were like over 6 million views, and people started coming forward saying they had a connection to this, and they wanted to tell us more of the story. So we went all across the country listening to these stories, the workers, the children, the parents, and it was a really complicated picture, but it was a story that really needed to be told, because what's happening is there's been this perfect storm where it was easier for children to come unaccompanied to this country during COVID, but it also meant there was a labor shortage here. And so what happened is there were a lot of children here who needed to send money back to their families in Guatemala, and they couldn't support themselves. And so what happened is they fell into this cycle where they're working in these really dangerous conditions. That, as you can hear, it's even dangerous for adults, but for children, it was unfathomable.
There's a lot of people that want to talk to help you tell the story, but not many people that want their identities to be known. Understandably, you actually talked to a current employee at Marjack who says they are employed legally and a former manager at a slaughterhouse. They asked you to stay anonymous because of fear of repercussions. They want to maintain their employment. You've done a lot of reporting on immigration in the United States. How difficult is it to get folks like that, to get stories like this, and get people to be on camera with you, to reveal their identity, knowing there could be repercussions to that?
This was a completely new challenge, unlike anything I've encountered. I mean, I've really covered immigrants for 10 years. I'm really comfortable walking up to people just as they brought everything they owned on their backs crossing the border. But this was so complicated because the people most affected by this wanted to stay the most anonymous. And a lot of the children, you'd think we would be coming in trying to show what's happening, shining a light, and these children would be running to get out of these conditions. But in fact, a lot of them really needed the money. They wanted to keep their jobs. The adults who worked there wanted to keep their jobs, or they were afraid of retaliation by these major companies. And so we really had to walk this fine line between showing what's happening, it's a trend and it really can't be ignored, but also trying to protect some of the innocent people who are coming out and telling us what's going on. And it is complicated. Obviously, if you or I ever had a child work in these conditions, we'd want them to leave. But for children whose families' livelihoods depend on this money, can be a really hard cycle to break out of.
What was the most shocking thing you learned, Julia?
I think it was the fact that children were working in plants overnight and going to school in the morning, falling asleep with burns on their hands.
My gosh.
And the teachers knew it, and it still kept happening.
It's a must watch. Julia, thank you so much for this incredibly important work that you're doing. You can watch Slaughterhouse Children now on NBCNews.com. After the break, escalating tensions along Israel's border with Lebanon. Hallie traveling to an area locals say is the war's second front line. All right, welcome back. Tonight, Israel says it's now, quote, closer today to war with the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah. As it says, attacks are steadily increasing since its war against Hamas started. With new rocket fire, not in Gaza, but in northern Israel and Lebanon, we're seeing mounting concerns this war could spread. Hallie is back with us now from Tel Aviv once again. This has been a persistent concern, from the beginning of this conflict, that it spread beyond the borders of Israel and included Hezbollah. And now we are seeing glimpses of what that could actually look like.
Well, and it's the fear for the people who live on both sides of that border, people in southern Lebanon, people in northern Israel who have had to evacuate, who have had to pick up and leave their homes. Israel says that tens of thousands of people on its side of the border, more than 60,000 people, have had to leave where they live to find someplace safer to go, as sirens reportedly went off just again today in the town that we visited. Watch. New Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon aimed at Hezbollah in footage released by the IDF as both sides trade fire. Roughly 2,000 rockets believed to have crisscrossed the border since October 7th. Reportedly 4 Israeli civilians killed and more than 30 Lebanese. In northern Israel, the fear? War could come here. Ariel Frisch says it already is.
We have every day here shooting missiles.
We meet Frisch in Kiryat Shimona, a town so close to Lebanon, just over the ridge. He says people don't run to a shelter outside if sirens go off. There's no time. We hear IDF rockets nearby.
Kiryat Shimona was the first to get, this is our bombs. This is our rockets.
And later, tell me about living here. What's it normally like? Hear it again.
On regular times, you hear only birds here.
In regular times, about 23,000 people live here. They've been evacuated, with stores gated up, the playgrounds deserted. Frisch takes us to the school, where there are no students.
As you can see,
just an empty office, his own. He's the principal here, trying to keep track of the kids now scattered across dozens of other towns.
we have our troops instead of students. Shouldn't be this way. Shouldn't be.
In the center of town, we see what's left of this burger shop, destroyed. But a couple doors down, soldiers filled the tables outside another restaurant. It belongs to Shlomi Atbupol, who stayed in town, he tells us, to sell kebabs to hungry troops.
Where I go? I need to stay here to give food to the soldiers.
Clearly, not everyone has left. What do you hope for the future for your town?
Just peace, prosperity, keeping the Hezbollah away.
October 7th haunts them here. If Hamas could attack there, what's next? You're worried, it sounds like, that what happened down in the south could happen in the north.
No, it will definitely happen. If we will not fight and strike first, it will happen.
So that's a sense of what's happening on the Israeli side of things, with people evacuated, for example, to the coastal town of Haifa. We visited there, met some folks from another community who have basically been living in, hotels for the last couple of months. There is obviously an impact on the Lebanese side as well, with thousands of people believed to be evacuated. We've seen video of schools that have turned into shelters, people using buckets to wash their clothes. This is having an impact regionally. And while there is such a spotlight, Yasmin, on the south, of course, with the war in Gaza, it gets back to what you and I started this conversation with about the concern that there could be an escalation somewhere else.
What is the real-time escalation that we've seen in the north on the border in the last couple of days? Hal, right?
Yeah.
We heard from the Hezbollah leader, Hassan Nasrallah, a few weeks ago, who said he had no interest in getting involved in this war. We know Iran backs Hezbollah as well. They have said they have no interest in getting involved in this war, although they are acting through their proxies. What is the real-time developments in that area right now and this possible expansion?
Yeah, you've been seeing, and it's not just in the north, too, as you well know. So you've been seeing concerns about the level of fire that's been traded. And to be clear, that's been happening really since almost roughly the start of this war, probably a little bit in. There's also the concern, and you mentioned Iran-backed proxies, of what's happening with the Houthis in the Red Sea. And that's another area that people are watching about the potential security risk there. We saw those moves by Defense Secretary Austin as he's been in the region as well. He's got a meeting tomorrow on that. And we have now heard from a Houthi official essentially saying, warning other countries not to get involved with this international initiative there, saying that it would be a mistake. Yasmin.
Yeah, and Defense Secretary Austin naming Iran specifically as he addressed the world today from Israel. Hallie Jackson Forrest, thank you so much. Appreciate it, my friend. Still ahead, smash and grabs at stores across the country, the work of a seedy retail mafia, or something a lot simpler. That's next in tonight's Original. All right, we want to bring you today's Original with in-depth reporting on a topic that we've been keeping an eye on. And tonight we're talking about retail theft, a crime that seems to be all over the news these days, with dramatic videos of smash and grabs and huge mobs of shoplifters going viral all the time. Retailers have placed the blame on what they're calling organized retail crime. But experts have been calling some of the industry's claims into question. Christine Romans has the story.
You've seen the videos.
The thieves can swipe tens of thousands of dollars of merchandise.
They smashed glass display cases, filled their bags with jewelry, then took off.
Smashing an SUV into the building, then making off with a still undetermined amount of merchandise.
Smash and grabs getting a ton of airtime that the industry blames on a rise in so-called organized retail crime.
Multiple people coming in to rob a store to steal goods that they turn around and sell, often on online marketplaces.
That might not be the whole story.
It seems to be a term devised by the retail industry. It's not a legally defined crime. So it's a little bit in the eye of the beholder.
But retail heads say they've had to close some stores because of it. Earlier this year, the National Retail Federation put out a report saying organized retail crime is responsible for nearly half of the $94.5 billion estimated in inventory loss in 2021, up from $61.7 billion in 2019. And it asked Congress to broaden the definition of organized crime to encompass retail theft, which would raise the possible penalties for stealing products. But in November, the NRF retracted that claim, saying those numbers were based on mistaken data stemming from this 2021 testimony.
Organized retail crime represents a massive and growing threat to the tune of $45 billion a year.
Dugan did not respond to a request for comment, but in a statement to NBC News, the NRF acknowledged the retraction, but said it stood behind the claim that organized retail crime is a serious problem. Economist Trevor Wegener was one of the first to say the numbers don't add up.
And it boiled down to the claim that half of all retail inventory shrink came from organized retail crime, which did not pass a sanity check internally.
He says that while organized retail crime is very much a real issue, it's likely responsible for a much smaller share of losses.
The data we have seen is consistent with organized retail crime still being responsible for about 5% of total retail inventory shrink.
The NRF's own numbers show external theft is responsible for less than half the industry's losses, and organized retail crime is a slice of that. And even Walgreens CFO admitted in a January earnings call that the company might have overstated the issue.
You know, maybe we cried too much last year.
Even analysts who think that theft is actually a risk, they may very well be using it either as an excuse for poorly merchandised stores that aren't as successful, maybe poorly staffed stores, poorly located stores.
Brick and mortar stores are dealing with staffing shortages and walkouts, competition from online retailers, and payouts from opioid crisis settlements. In a statement, CVS reiterated the problem of stealing, saying that incidents of theft in its stores have increased 30% since 2020. But many chains have doubled down on loss prevention measures that make it harder, not easier, for customers to buy products.
Now, the products that we buy every day are not easily accessible.
Something even as simple as like deodorant or hand soap, a lot of times that's behind glass.
So you have to go through someone with a key
to open up a case.
Now some customers turning to delivery services like Capsule, Amazon, and Instacart to bring medicines and groceries straight to their doors.
I think online definitely makes it easier. All of these measures just add friction to the process, and I think there does become a certain point where it's not worth it anymore.
But some say in-person shopping is worth the hassle.
Just the convenience of being able to go into a store, it's kind of unmatched by anything else.
While others say these anti-theft measures have led to a diminished customer experience, retail analysts are still bullish.
If you look at overall sales, they're actually up both brick and mortar and on e-commerce.
Brick and mortar still on a solid foundation.
And Christine Romans is joining me now. I got to tell you, Christine, I cannot buy a toothbrush.
I know.
Without getting it unlocked behind that glass case. But I'm wondering, is this actually a problem? Or is it not?
The retail experience has definitely changed, right? Is it a problem? Yes, organized retail crime is a problem. You've seen those videos. Right. Those things really happen. But how much of a problem, and what is the share of organized retail crime in the overall shrinkage of some of these companies? One study found, and this is so interesting to me, that shoplifting, that retail crime is up first half of 2023 compared with 2019. But when you take out New York City, it's actually down. So it's a mixed picture across the country. And the industry, these experts are saying maybe the industry is attributing other reasons to organized retail crime than the actual event itself. It's just fascinating. Not good numbers.
Real quick on this, though, we're calling it organized. Who's organizing it?
Well, there's all kinds of after markets for selling this stuff. So the idea is that there are bands of criminals who are getting together, even sometimes hiring people, homeless people sometimes, to steal this stuff so they can sell it. They can sell it online later.
That is fascinating. Christine Romans for us. Thank you, Christine. Appreciate it. That wraps up this hour, everybody. Coverage picks up right now. All right, we are coming on the air with news of more deaths just into us in this storm threatening millions up and down the East Coast. States of emergency in parts of New York and New Jersey tonight. Ahead of what's expected to be an evening that brings multiple inches of rain. We've got a reporter posted up at Philly's airport with how the storm is affecting holiday travel, plus a new inflection point in the war between Israel and Hamas, how the U.S. and other global leaders are putting pressure on Israel tonight to scale back the intense bombardment inside Gaza. Hallie's on the ground for us in Tel Aviv. Then breaking news coming into us tonight. A New York jury convicting actor Jonathan Majors of assault and harassment. Marvel now dropping the actor. What this all means for the once rising star. And former Congressman George Santos trying to make sure you're still talking about him by now taking shots at his ex-colleagues in a new interview today. The message he's trying to send as he's still facing federal charges. Plus, a new NBC News Digital documentary highlighting a pervasive issue here in the U.S. Thousands of children illegally working inside dangerous slaughterhouses. We're going behind the scenes with one of our correspondents who looked into this for a year in tonight's Backstory. Hey, everybody, I'm Yasmin in for Hallie, who's on assignment in Israel. And just to us, news of 2 more deaths in this powerful storm. Millions up and down the East Coast, underwater and in the dark tonight. Hit with lots of rain and really strong winds. You see here a tow truck having to rescue a car stuck in a flooded New Jersey street. Still, 7 million people under flood alerts, rivers above flood stages. And these high winds are also bringing down trees. And we're just learning 2 people in the Northeast died when trees fell on their homes. Falling trees also impacting power lines with nearly 800,000 people across the East Coast in the dark right now. Plus, in North Carolina, 2 people died yesterday when they were hit by another car while trying to help one that hydroplaned and crashed off an interstate. Tonight, states of emergency are in effect in some New York and New Jersey counties. Several school districts closed in those states. By the end of today, 2 inches of rain falling in every single East Coast state. In New York, scaffolding literally blown over in what looks like a parking lot coming crashing down on cars, as 5 million are still under wind alerts. And airports hit as well. More than 500 cancellations and 3,400 delays at critical times when people are jump-starting holiday travel. Plus, further south, where this storm hit first, people now working to clean up the damage as homes were destroyed and several streets were flooded. We have team coverage. Emily Ikeda on Long Island, New York for us, George Solis at Philadelphia Airport, and meteorologist Bill Cairns. Emily, I'm going to start with you on this one. We see the roads flooded around you. Give us a sense of what it's like there, what you're seeing.
Well, Yasmin, keep in mind, the rain has actually moved out of this area several hours ago, and yet the floodwaters remain. We're continuing to watch them recede, making for dangerous driving conditions into the night. Officials urging people to continue to exercise caution, even as this massive storm has continued off of the East Coast. And this has been the picture we've seen across so much of the Northeast, from that persistent rain pounding the area, stranding some drivers in roadways that were transformed into waterways. There was a water rescue just down the street from where I'm standing, a woman at a restaurant. And then in nearby Vermont, there was a village that actually had to be evacuated, facing a dangerous combination of both the persistent rainfall, but then also the snowmelt. Remember, we're in unseasonably warm temperatures. We saw those playing out today. You had mentioned there were emergencies declared in parts of New Jersey and New York. Here are some residents reacting. Take a listen.
I was worried about, the neighbors, because we didn't know how far the tree had reached.
I heard the wind, and then I felt something shaking, so I woke up out of bed before my alarm. And then I heard the sound, and then the lights went off.
And we'll continue to see some blustery conditions, but earlier today, those winds were howling, wind gusts topping 60 miles an hour in at least 7 states throughout the region, contributing to the widespread power outages we're seeing across the region. Tonight, Yasmin, nearly 800,000 people are still without power.
Wow. We are also, Emily, learning about several deaths in the Northeast tonight as well. Walk us through that. What do we know?
Yeah, so we had learned about several deaths in the south when the storm had started over the weekend, and now we're learning about some of the deadly toll that was taken on the Northeast region, including an 89-year-old man. Authorities say a tree had fallen onto his trailer, tragically killing him. Also in Maine, a 40-year-old man, we're learning from officials, they say he had been trying to clear off debris from his roof when a tree fell and killed him as well. A deadly toll, certainly a deadly winter wall-up to the start of this holiday week. Yasmin.
Wow. Emily Ikeda for us. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Want to bring in George Solis at Philadelphia International Airport to talk more about what's happening with travel. I talked about cancellations. I talked about delays. A lot of folks obviously frustrated at the beginnings of this holiday travel time. Walk us through it.
Yeah, keep in mind that we're expecting 2.8 million people to start traveling daily as we get closer and closer to the holiday. And given all the pictures and images of some of the flooding and the destruction that we've seen, it is a wonder that there have not been more delays and cancellations. As you mentioned, more than 3,500 delays, more than 500 cancellations. A lot of that, of course, in the Northeast corridor where we've been slammed by this coastal storm. A lot of people making sure that they were checking on their airlines, checking their flights to see what those delays were looking like. So some people definitely taking advice as we saw those storm systems move in. Earlier today, we spoke to people here at Philadelphia International who were treading through some of that treacherous terrain this morning and some of those winds to get here. They say, you know what? I may have to change my flight. I may have to pick a different flight, but I want to get to my destination safely. Some of them saying, look, we miss our flight, but there's no more priority than safety when you have a storm like this. Here's a listen.
We had to delay our morning flight because it was raining real bad in Delaware. So I was just like, let me just delay it. It worked out. So now we're going to get home safely. A little later than expected, but safe.
Yeah, and of course, the good news in all of this is that some of that system, as Emily also mentioned, is moving out of our region. Temperatures starting to dip a little bit. That's not really impacting the travel, so to speak, but a lot of people obviously a little bit more comfortable coming to the airport right now. Here at Philadelphia International, not too many delays or cancellations, but again, big picture as we look at that big map. Obviously, that's going to have a ripple in the next couple of days as well, Yasmin.
Let's talk about the fallout from last year. Southwest Airlines agreeing to pay a historic $140 million fine by the federal government for the travel disaster from last December. Do you think there's extra pressure this year to get it right because of what happened to Southwest?
Yeah, absolutely no question. And the Department of Transportation Secretary Buttigieg making that point today that, look, we want to make sure that these airlines know that we will hold them accountable. We will make sure that they answer for any disruptions across the airlines. Southwest, of course, falling victim to that when they had all of those delays and cancellations. Millions of people impacted. A number of those flights that were impacted. So this is a sort of precedent-setting moment. So a lot of eyes on Southwest and a lot of the airlines, especially when you have a system like this that moves, and it already has been impacting some travel delays and cancellations. So it'll be something that we keep a close watch on as we enter the travel period. Yasmin.
George Solis for us. Thank you, George. Appreciate it. Last but not least, and always the best, want to bring in meteorologist Bill Cairns. It took me a moment to say that last part, but I said it. I got it. The best. Talk us through it. This thing is heading out.
Oof, what a storm.
What a storm, right? But there's going to be some flooding, especially with the rivers.
Yeah, we're not done yet. Some of these rivers still have to crest, but unfortunately, some are washing out bridges and roads. I just saw a video, big ski resort in Maine, Sunday River. They had a ton of snow on the mountain, one of the best early season ski seasons. They had like 4 or 5 inches of rain. There are bridges that go to the mountain that are washed out, so they're closed tomorrow trying to assess their damage. And that's the scene all over northern New England. We've got a lot of problems, too, with some of the major rivers through Connecticut and to the south. So the storm itself is now racing up through Maine. We're almost done with it. The backside of it, it's colder. There's been snow showers all day long. Winter has returned to the Ohio Valley and the Great Lakes, and that will tomorrow be through the Northeast. But it's nothing that will cause delays or anything like that. But we're just about done with our flooding process of this. But the flash flood warnings do continue. Conway, New Hampshire, the Rumford, Rangeley. This is the area where the ski resorts are, Sugarloaf and Sunday River, and then up just to the northwest here, just near Greenville, Maine. These will be dropped soon. Most of the heavy rain is over with. But as I said, the rivers are still accumulating the water. So the river flooding, if you look at this map here, all of these dots here show you where we have rivers that are in flood stage. It's almost all of the Northeast. When you get to the red and the magenta, purplish color there, this is the major flooding. A lot of the rivers in New Jersey are exceptionally high right now. The wind damage, pretty much over with. When people in Maine, coastal Maine, and coastal Massachusetts are impressed by a storm, you know it was a powerful storm, Yasmin, because they were even telling me, when is this wind going to end? And they were comparing this to like a weaker low-end hurricane or tropical storm.
Yeah, they know how to deal with weather, that is for sure. We've been talking a lot about the East Coast over the last couple of days because of obviously the expectations of this storm. There's a lot happening on the West Coast, though.
Yeah, this will be the next storm we'll track. And this isn't going to be a coast-to-coast storm, at least not yet. It's going to take us time spinning just off the West Coast, bringing scattered showers from the Bay Area northwards. But then as we go through, it looks like Tuesday night and then Wednesday, some of that heavier rain will begin to head towards Los Angeles, even into Thursday. That'll be the next weather event story. But no coast-to-coast storms this week. The rest of us get a break.
Bill Cairns, as always, thank you, my friend, and you are my favorite. Overseas now, we are seeing a new inflection point in the war in Gaza, with Israel facing even more pressure now to scale back the intense bombardment it's leading inside Gaza. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin making a key trip to Tel Aviv today, underscoring what he's calling the need to protect civilians from harm, as the death toll in Gaza nears another grim record, with close to 20,000 killed, according to the territory's health officials.
Democracies are stronger and more secure when we uphold the law of war. And as I've said, protecting Palestinian civilians in Gaza is both a moral duty and a strategic imperative.
And it's not just the Secretary of Defense. The CIA director is meeting with Israeli and Qatari officials in Poland today in major talks for another potential hostage deal and humanitarian ceasefire, a U.S. official telling NBC News. And we're seeing mounting outrage inside Israel. Take a look at this. Protests in the streets of Tel Aviv. People there demanding Israel's government to do more to secure the release of hostages after that country's military revealed it mistakenly killed 3 Israeli hostages inside Gaza. Hallie Jackson is on the ground for us in Tel Aviv with more on this. There are these big diplomatic efforts today happening. Hal, talk about what some of the world's top leaders are trying to accomplish here and how it squares with what we're seeing on the ground in Gaza right now.
Well, so much of it, and I'm glad you put it that way, Yasmin, because I was just going to say so much of it relates to how do you mitigate the suffering in Gaza, those desperate situations that we're seeing, because you now have at least one international aid organization suggesting that Israel is using starvation as a weapon of war, from Human Rights Watch. You have the WHO saying that they are appalled at the effective destruction, they say, of a hospital in northern Gaza. There are real concerns about where this goes, how much worse it could possibly get when the conditions are so horrific already. There's actually, our team is doing incredible work in Gaza, met a girl, 12 years old, who explained how she is standing in line for hours just to get some ladles of food, essentially, into her pail. We're talking to people, our teams in Gaza, talking to people who are describing children who haven't eaten for literal days at a time, 3 days, 5 days, because there is just so little aid getting through and so little available to them. I mean, that really is the situation here. We've talked about the risk of disease spreading. We've talked about the risk, obviously, from a security perspective, considering those airstrikes are still intense and are still happening here. So with that as the backdrop, and that is such important context, with nearly 20,000 people estimated to have been killed since the start of this war, according to the Hamas-run health ministry, how do you mitigate that? Couple of things. First, you saw Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin push for more humanitarian aid. He made that clear publicly, that more can and should be done, essentially, while also reiterating that the U.S. supports Israel in its war against Hamas after that terror attack on October 7th. The other piece of this, do you try to get to some kind of humanitarian ceasefire, right? A temporary pause, if you will, that would have the benefit of not just getting aid into Gaza, but also, of course, getting some talks happening about the release of hostages, about 130 hostages from Israel believed to be held in Gaza right now. You are seeing, not on your screen, literally, you're seeing Secretary Austin, but what we have seen in the region is the CIA chief, Bill Burns, in Warsaw, heading to Europe. So up there, meeting with his Qatari and Israeli counterparts in a move to try to get something going here. That said, one of the top national security officials at the White House said he doesn't believe that necessarily talks are imminent, but that they are literally working every single day to try to get some movement on that front, yes.
So you mentioned it, right? Qatari PM in Warsaw, Mossad chief in Warsaw as well,
right,
along with the head of the CIA. You also, though, have Hamas leaders saying they're not even willing to negotiate, really, or release any more hostages until fighting stops.
Right, and so something has to give, right? Like there has to be some kind of a change in the equation here, and the question is, what can facilitate that change? I spoke with family members of hostages, including family members of those 3 Israelis who were killed by their own military, those hostages who held up those signs, held up a white flag, according to the Israeli military, but were still killed in this friendly fire incident, if you will. The father of one of them, Alon Shamriz, issued this plea to President Biden. I mean, very directly, because I said, what message do you think you want an American audience to hear? He says, President Biden, I'm talking to you, basically. He says, I know that you can put pressure on the region. He says, I feel like you are my president because you are the one who can try to get something done on this front. And so I think that you are seeing not just him, but others, and we hear it a lot when we go down to Hostage Square in Tel Aviv, when we're out at the protests over this weekend, people saying, you know, America can help make a difference here by putting pressure on allies. And others in the region. The other piece of this, which is kind of interesting, Yasmin, they're very aware, some of these hostage family members, that going on and talking to international media members, doing interviews in print, on TV, is something that they feel like could help move the needle a little bit by adding to that pressure. And so that is like a very intentional, I don't want to say tactic, but it's a very sort of intentional move by some of these folks to come in and be willing to speak, you know, live on NBC News Now, or talk with me in an interview, or one of my colleagues, or whatever the case may be, which is also part of the dynamic here.
Yeah. Hallie Jackson, we appreciate you, as always, and we're going to see you back later on your show for more reporting from the region. You can also catch more of Hallie's reporting in about 14 minutes over on Nightly News tonight, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, wherever you get your local NBC station. Some breaking news late tonight. We're just learning that Marvel is dropping actor Jonathan Majors, a source with direct knowledge telling NBC. It's coming after a New York jury found him guilty today of assault and harassment of his ex-girlfriend in a split verdict. The case revolves around an alleged incident back in March. Majors' ex says he physically assaulted her in the backseat of a car, causing several injuries. Majors has maintained that he's innocent here. His sentencing will be in February. Want to bring in our legal analyst, Denny Saval, to talk more about this. Walk us through, Denny, if you will, what this verdict means.
From an academic criminal defense attorney perspective,
Right.
It's a mixed bag. He was acquitted on the more serious charges and convicted on a misdemeanor and then a violation, which in New York is really not even a crime. So you could say from that perspective, it is almost a win for the defense. But for someone with a career like Jonathan Majors,
Right.
It's a career ender. This was a not guilty all the way or bust for this defendant, because now, of course, his Marvel is dropping him. I mean, the career consequences, as they are for many professionals who are charged with a crime, they simply can't get convicted of the lesser crimes. any conviction is the end. And that's what's happened here. Jonathan Major's attorney issued a statement. It is clear, he says, that the jury did not believe Grace Jabari's story of what happened in the SUV because they found that Mr. Majors did not intentionally cause any injuries to her. We are grateful for that. We are disappointed, however, that despite not believing Ms. Jabari, the jury nevertheless found that Mr. Majors was somehow reckless.
Wow.
I do feel, from a criminal defense attorney perspective, I feel their pain, the attorney's pain, in that it does beg the question, if the jury didn't find her credible, why not acquit as to everything? And I think what the answer to that is that they found that maybe they didn't find Ms. Jabari to be completely credible, but she was injured, and they could reasonably conclude that he was at least reckless in that motor vehicle when they were struggling probably for the phone or whatever.
You kind of alluded to this, but this trial really took a lot of twists and turns throughout. Can you kind of walk us through that?
Sure. I mean, this case is one of those that stands for the development of digital evidence. In the past, domestic cases and assault cases were often he said, she said, or he said, he said. In modern times now, with surveillance video, phone information, all the imagery that we get, we see a timeline right there. This is some pretty compelling evidence that came not only from Jabari, but from the digital evidence in this case. While it didn't capture the actual alleged assault in the motor vehicle, it did capture the defendant getting out of the car, the victim chasing him down, maybe a few hundred yards, or a few dozen yards, rather. So, yes, there were a lot of twists and turns, the allegations. But I got to tell you, in assault cases like this, because of the nature, because it is one person's word against another, you do see these kinds of twists and turns, this kind of high drama in the courtroom, because the explanation by each side it's going to be so different they won't even approximate each other. And that's what we saw here in this case.
Danny Ceballos, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, so in the last couple of hours, a parenting vlogger who once had millions of subscribers online emotionally pleading guilty to multiple counts of child abuse in a Utah courtroom.
To count 6, aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony.
With my deepest regret and sorrow for my family and my children, guilty.
Police arrested Ruby Franke, a mother of 6, and her business partner back in August. You're seeing police body camera footage of that arrest here. They found one of Franke's kids with open wounds after escaping from the business partner's home. Police discovered another one of Franke's kids described as emaciated and malnourished at the same home. Once all the details of this case came out, it blew up online. People were analyzing Franke's old content to see if they had missed any warning signs of abuse. It also started back up the conversation on legal protections for child influencers here in the U.S. I want to bring in Steve Patterson to talk more about this. Steve, give us some context here about how we got to this point and what comes next.
Yeah, so after she was arrested, Ruby Franke, back in September, has spent the entire time essentially in jail without bail, awaiting for this hearing, which she just had. And in that time, her attorneys have put out a statement to say that not only will she take the plea deal, but that she's working on herself, that she's working on reformation, that she, in taking this plea deal, wants to get the guilty plea out of the way so she can focus on her family and focus on being a better human. And that's what we heard. She did plead today, of course, to 4 counts of the 6 that she was accused of felony aggravated child abuse. 2 of those counts dropping off because, of course, there was the parameters of the plea deal allowing her to sort of do more for the prosecution. And as we're learning, sort of along with this packet of information that came from her attorneys to say that, yes, Ruby Franke is a better person, that she's working on herself, that she's been accused of all these counts, that she takes responsibility for what she's been accused of. It also talks a lot about her business partner, Jody Hildebrandt, who was also accused of the same crimes, literally the same 6 counts for criminal child abuse, and how sort of the blame is shifting from a person who may be very involved with herself to a person that got involved with someone else, Yasmin. And that's sort of where we are with sort of everything in this tangled web of a woman and her business partner, both accused of the same crime, but blame now shifting from one person to another.
I want to talk about Jody Hildebrandt, her business partner.
Yeah.
I want to bring her up. This is an Instagram post with Franke on their Moms of Truth account where they talk about relationship and parenting advice. Hildebrandt actually had her own life coaching service as well. former clients telling NBC News, could be extreme at times. What more do we know about her and her role in all of this?
For everything that we know about Ruby Franke and all the online sleuths that you mentioned, sort of breaking down her content, Jodi Hildebrandt was sort of that on steroids, right? It was the heightened version, more extreme. And after Ruby's content was taken down, these two got together. The allegations from Ruby's camp are that it was taken to such an extreme place that isolated Ruby Franke from her family, that led to these more extreme ideations about who she was and what she should be doing. And that is the thing that led to the downfall of Ruby Franke, blaming her business partner, Jodi Hildebrandt, for where she wound up. And so this may be a part of the plea deal, that she has to work with the prosecution, work with testifying against Jodi Hildebrandt on what she's done as part of the reason why she took the deal today. Yasmin.
All right, Steve Patterson for us. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. All right, a Delaware man is facing DUI charges tonight after he allegedly crashed his car into a vehicle that was part of President Biden's motorcade. Look at this. It all went down last night, the president leaving his re-election headquarters, when he and his Secret Service detail were startled by a loud crash. Secret Service surrounded the car with their guns drawn. You can see the driver in the front seat with his hands up. The Secret Service put out a statement basically saying that there was never any threat to the president or the first lady. I want to bring in NBC's Aaron Gilchrist to talk more about this. So the Secret Service, Aaron, saying the president was never in harm's way. How are investigators, how are they looking into, how are they framing this incident?
So this was an accidental collision. That is how the Wilmington Police Department is framing what happened here. But, you know, it's not unusual necessarily for a presidential motorcade to have some sort of an accident happen, right? We've seen instances of that in the past. What is so unusual here is to see the president of the United States standing on the sidewalk and witnessing this collision himself. President Biden and his wife, the First Lady, were leaving their campaign headquarters after dinner last night when, as they stopped to talk to reporters, you hear this loud crash, right? And that's the car hitting a Secret Service vehicle. The president stops, looks over, and then you hear that car's engine rev. The agent grabs the president's arm. A couple of them sort of move him closer to the open door of the SUV as other agents who are part of the motorcade surround the car, hands on their guns, talking to the man inside, trying to figure out what is going on here, while the rest of the motorcade, as we understand it, continued on its way. These Secret Service agents are there to protect the president, and so that was their primary focus, to continue with the president on as they would. The Wilmington Police Department comes in. They were in charge of the investigation, trying to figure out what happened here. They released a statement early this morning after working through the night on some of this. We'll show you the statement from the police department there in Wilmington, saying essentially that this was an accidental collision. They've charged the driver, a 46-year-old man from Wilmington, with driving under the influence of alcohol. And that is essentially where this ends. We know the president was back out today, Yasmin, making several stops there in Wilmington, where his home is, and before he returns back to D.C. tomorrow.
All right, Aaron Gilchrist for us. Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate it. We have breaking news, everybody. Since we went on the air, a volcano now erupting in Iceland. We're going to tell you about the push to get people out of the way of the flowing lava. Plus, we're just getting word that the death toll is rising after an earthquake hit northern China, the latest coming in the 5 things. We'll be right back. So, all right, let's get over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, NBC News has learned that Hunter Biden will have his initial court appearance on 9 tax-related charges on January 11th in federal court in Los Angeles. He'll be arraigned on 3 felony and 6 misdemeanor tax offenses. Number 2, officials say at least 86 people are dead after an estimated 6.1 magnitude earthquake struck a northwest province in China. According to initial reports, many houses in the region collapsed. Rescue work is underway. Number 3, the late Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, the first woman to serve on the Supreme Court, is lying in repose tonight in the court building. O'Connor was honored earlier today by current justices, retired Justice Anthony Kennedy, former law clerks, and family in a private service. The public is invited to pay their respects until 8 p.m. tonight. A funeral service is scheduled for tomorrow at Washington National Cathedral. Number 4, Rudy Giuliani is being sued again just days after being hit with $148 million in damages in a defamation suit Former Georgia election workers Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss filed a new lawsuit against Giuliani over remarks he made about them immediately following Friday's verdict. Freeman and Moss say they want a judge to permanently bar the former Trump attorney from continuing to defame them. Number 5, an evening dress worn by the late Princess Diana has sold for $1.1 million. That is 11 times its estimate, breaking the record price for one of her gowns at auction. All right, the latest chapter in the saga of disgraced ex-Congressman George Santos is dropping today. In an interview with the comedian Z-Way, Santos takes shots at his former colleague, says he's not ruling out another political run, and dodged a lot of questions about the federal charges against him and the possibility of going to prison.
What could we do to get you to go away?
Stop inviting me to your gigs.
What excites you most about going to prison?
That's a below the belt.
So remember, Santos is facing 23 federal charges, including fraud, identity theft, money laundering. His trial has been set for September of next year. I want to bring in Sahil Kapoor on Capitol Hill for us with more on this. The tone of this interview, as we well know, especially about the person that conducted the interview, was largely satirical, but he's still facing some real serious federal charges. How does all of this impact his case?
Well, it's probably not helpful to his legal case, Yasmin, unless he thinks this is some sort of Hail Mary to get potential future jurors to like him. He should probably know, as I'm sure he's been advised, that anything he says in a public media interview, whether it's satirical or not, can be used against him in a court of law. But having covered George Santos's very brief congressional career, I can confirm that this is a man who likes drawing attention to himself, and that may be part of what he's trying to do here. Let's play a little bit more of what George Santos had to say in that same interview.
How many stolen credit cards did you use to pay for this look? Ferragamo, Hermes, you like the nice stuff too. How do you pay for it?
I've always worked Z-Way. So, yeah, my own money.
Stolen credit cards, talking about them publicly. Again, I'm not a fancy lawyer, Yasmin, but
Wow.
It's very difficult for me to see how this is in any way helpful to his very, very serious legal case.
Yeah, any way to see that. He's already been voted out, as I mentioned, of the House. They're on recess right now for the holidays. When something like this, though, drops, right, when something like this is out there about their ex-colleague, do people care? Do people in Congress care? The lawmakers care that voted him out?
It's hard for me to count any Republican in the House who cares about George Santos. I do think they care about him trashing them now. He seems to be on a bit of a revenge tour. You know, he's tweeting at them, bashing them, mocking them, dredging up their old skeletons, drawing attention to negative stories about them. Some of them have issued statements responding to his claims that he's going to file ethics complaints against some of them. So he is still a nuisance to some of his former colleagues, not least because that seat on Long Island, on Queens, that he used to control is now vacant, and their majority is even smaller. Let's put up a graphic about how rare expulsion is to give you a sense of how low an opinion his colleagues had of him. He is just the 6th congressman in American history to be expelled. The other 5 are on the screen right now. 3 of them were expelled since the Civil War. He's only the 3rd since the Civil War, Yasmin, to be expelled.
Sahil Kapoor for us. Thank you. Appreciate it. Still ahead, our year-long investigation into illegal child workers across the country. The story of how one teen's job at a poultry plant ended in his death. That's next. Welcome back. NBC covers hundreds of international stories every day. And because it's tough to read, to watch, or to listen to all of them, our international teams have done it for you. Here are some things that they're keeping an eye on in a segment that we call The Global. In Iceland, look at this. A volcano is erupting in southwest Iceland following weeks of intense earthquake activity. Authorities there evacuating 4,000 people in the region and closing that super famous Blue Lagoon spa because of the threats, with lava now spewing onto the ground. In Mexico, the president there is now calling for a state prosecutor to step down after a gunman killed at least 12 people at a holiday party in Guanajuato. There's been high levels of violence between cartels and gangs in that state. It has the highest number of homicides in Mexico. Officials investigating. And out of Australia, a former tropical cyclone is bringing floods, heavy rains, and even a super rare crocodile sighting in a storm drain. Officials say it dumped months' worth of rain in the region, forcing some people there to evacuate, even stranding some on rooftops. No deaths have been reported so far. All right, it is time to get to the backstory, our behind-the-scenes look at how a story comes together and how it fits into a bigger picture. New details about a miner who died in a poultry plant accident in Mississippi. The company confirming to NBC News that the 16-year-old got the job by using the identity of a 32-year-old. Duvon Perez, who you see here, died after getting sucked into equipment that accidentally turned on at a Marjack poultry plant. Perez's family didn't respond to a request for comment on the use of an adult's identity, and Marjack blames the hiring of the teen on a staffing company that supplies workers to the plant. It's a case that highlights the pervasive issue of illegal child labor here in the U.S. that NBC News has been looking into for a year now. And all the reporting is in a new documentary called Slaughterhouse Children. Here's a look and a warning that some of what you're about to see is graphic.
Things happen in a plant that adults aren't comfortable seeing. You walk through the plant, you can't walk through it without getting animal parts on you or blood all over you.
Desde muy principio, cuando entro en la puerta principal, veo el pollo, la sangre, las tripas.
You walk into the building, but the operation's enormous. And as we walked, I was just like, that's a kid. That's a kid.
Wow, and Julia Ainsley is one of the reporters who worked on this story. Julia, thank you so much for bringing this to us. We appreciate it. I want to talk about how it came to you. Your team and you based this documentary on reporting in 2 countries, 6 states, dozens of interviews after looking at thousands and thousands of pages of records. How did this start for you?
This started when we became aware of a Labor Department raid in a place called Grand Island, Nebraska. The raid took place in October, and they made news about this around this time last year, actually. I remember it was right before the holidays. We thought this needs to be looked into, and it made it a priority. And Lars Strickler, a producer I worked with on this, we noticed that raid started with 23 children, and then that same company that was responsible for cleaning slaughterhouses in Nebraska, they ended up finding that there were over 100 children working for that one company. We start looking at that one company, that one state, it expands, especially because we were able to talk to officials here in Washington who said, don't just look there, keep going. And then we also had people coming to us, people on LinkedIn, social media, people who said, I have a connection to this, in part because one of our stories that we first broke here on News Now went viral on YouTube. Within a day, there were like over 6 million views, and people started coming forward saying they had a connection to this, and they wanted to tell us more of the story. So we went all across the country listening to these stories, the workers, the children, the parents, and it was a really complicated picture, but it was a story that really needed to be told, because what's happening is there's been this perfect storm where it was easier for children to come unaccompanied to this country during COVID, but it also meant there was a labor shortage here. And so what happened is there were a lot of children here who needed to send money back to their families in Guatemala, and they couldn't support themselves. And so what happened is they fell into this cycle where they're working in these really dangerous conditions. As you can hear, it's even dangerous for adults, but for children, it was unfathomable.
There's a lot of people that want to talk to help you tell the story, but not many people that want their identities to be known. Understandably, you actually talked to a current employee at Marjack who says they are employed legally and a former manager at a slaughterhouse. They asked you to stay anonymous because of fear of repercussions. They want to maintain their employment. You've done a lot of reporting on immigration into the United States. How difficult is it to get folks like that, to get stories like this, and get people to be on camera with you, to reveal their identity, knowing there could be repercussions to that?
This was a completely new challenge, unlike anything I've encountered. I mean, I've really covered immigrants for 10 years. I'm really comfortable walking up to people just as they brought everything they owned on their backs crossing the border. But this was so complicated because the people most affected by this wanted to stay the most anonymous. And a lot of the children, you'd think we would be coming in, trying to show what's happening, shining a light, and these children would be running to get out of these conditions. But in fact, a lot of them really needed the money. They wanted to keep their jobs. The adults who worked there wanted to keep their jobs, or they were afraid of retaliation by these major companies. And so we really had to walk this fine line between showing what's happening, it's a trend and it really can't be ignored, but also trying to protect some of the innocent people who are coming out and telling us what's going on. And it is complicated. Obviously, if you or I ever had a child work in these conditions, we'd want them to leave. But for children whose families' livelihoods depend on this money, it can be a really hard cycle to break out of.
What was the most shocking thing you learned, Julia?
I think it was the fact that children were working in plants overnight and going to school in the morning, falling asleep with burns on their hands.
My gosh.
And the teachers knew it, and it still kept happening.
It's a must watch. Julia, thank you so much for this incredibly important work that you're doing. You can watch Slaughterhouse Children now on NBCNews.com. After the break, escalating tensions along Israel's border with Lebanon. Hallie traveling to an area locals say is the war's second front line. All right, welcome back. Tonight, Israel says it's now, quote, closer today to war with the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah, as it says attacks are steadily increasing since its war against Hamas started. With new rocket fire, not in Gaza, but in northern Israel and Lebanon, we're seeing mounting concerns this war could spread. Hallie is back with us now from Tel Aviv once again. This has been a persistent concern, how from the beginning of this conflict, that it spread beyond the borders of Israel and included Hezbollah. And now we are seeing glimpses of what that could actually look like.
Well, and it's the fear for the people who live on both sides of that border, people in southern Lebanon, people in northern Israel who have had to evacuate, who have had to pick up and leave their homes. Israel says that tens of thousands of people on its side of the border, more than 60,000 people, have had to leave where they live to find someplace safer to go, as sirens reportedly went off just again today in the town that we visited. Watch. New Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon aimed at Hezbollah in footage released by the IDF as both sides trade fire. Roughly 2,000 rockets believed to have crisscrossed the border since October 7th. Reportedly 4 Israeli civilians killed and more than 30 Lebanese. In northern Israel, the fear? War could come here. Ariel Frisch says it already is.
We have every day here shooting missiles.
We meet Frisch in Kiryat Shimona, a town so close to Lebanon, just over the ridge. He says people don't run to a shelter outside if sirens go off. There's no time. We hear IDF rockets nearby.
Kiryat Shimona was the first to get, this is our bombs. This is our rockets.
And later, tell me about living here. What's it normally like? Hear it again.
On regular times, you hear only birds here.
In regular times, about 23,000 people live here. They've been evacuated, with stores gated up, the playgrounds deserted. Frisch takes us to the school, where there are no students.
As you can see,
just an empty office, his own. He's the principal here, trying to keep track of the kids now scattered across dozens of other towns.
we have our troops instead of students. Shouldn't be this way. Shouldn't be.
In the center of town, we see what's left of this burger shop destroyed. But a couple doors down, soldiers filled the tables outside another restaurant. It belongs to Shlomi Atbupol, who stayed in town, he tells us, to sell kebabs to hungry troops.
Where I go, I need to stay here to give food to the soldiers.
Clearly, not everyone has left. What do you hope for the future for your town?
Just peace, prosperity, keeping the Hezbollah away.
October 7th haunts them here. If Hamas could attack there, what's next? You're worried, it sounds like, that what happened down in the south could happen in the north.
No, it will definitely happen. If we will not fight and strike first, it will happen.
So that's a sense of what's happening on the Israeli side of things, with people evacuated, for example, to the coastal town of Haifa. We visited there, met some folks from another community who have basically been living in, hotels for the last couple of months. There is obviously an impact on the Lebanese side as well, with thousands of people believed to be evacuated. We've seen video of schools that have turned into shelters, people using buckets to wash their clothes. This is having an impact regionally. And while there is such a spotlight, Yasmin, on the south, of course, with the war in Gaza, it gets back to what you and I started this conversation with about the concern that there could be an escalation somewhere else.
What is the real-time escalation that we've seen in the north on the border in the last couple of days? Hal, right? We heard from the Hezbollah leader, Hassan Nasrallah, a few weeks ago, who said he had no interest in getting involved in this war. We know Iran backs Hezbollah as well. They have said they have no interest in getting involved in this war, although they are acting through their proxies. What is the real-time developments in that area right now and this possible expansion?
Yeah, you've been seeing, and it's not just in the north, too, as you well know. So you've been seeing concerns about the level of fire that's been traded. And to be clear, that's been happening really since almost roughly the start of this war, probably a little bit in. There's also the concern, and you mentioned Iran-backed proxies, of what's happening with the Houthis in the Red Sea. And that's another area that people are watching about the potential security risk there. We saw those moves by Defense Secretary Austin as he's been in the region as well. He's got a meeting tomorrow on that. And we have now heard from a Houthi official essentially warning other countries not to get involved with this international initiative there, saying that it would be a mistake. Yasmin.
Yeah, and Defense Secretary Austin naming Iran specifically as he addressed the world today from Israel. Hallie Jackson-Forrest, thank you so much. Appreciate it, my friend. Still ahead, smash and grabs at stores across the country, the work of a seedy retail mafia, or something a lot simpler. That's next in tonight's Original. All right, we want to bring you today's Original with in-depth reporting on a topic that we've been keeping an eye on. And tonight we're talking about retail theft, a crime that seems to be all over the news these days, with dramatic videos of smash and grabs and huge mobs of shoplifters going viral all the time. Retailers have placed the blame on what they're calling organized retail crime. But experts have been calling some of the industry's claims into question. Christine Romans has the story.
You've seen the videos. The thieves can swipe tens of thousands of dollars of merchandise.
They smashed glass display cases, filled their bags with jewelry, then took off. Smashing an SUV into the building, then making off with a still undetermined amount of merchandise.
Smash and grabs getting a ton of airtime that the industry blames on a rise in so-called organized retail crime.
Multiple people coming in to rob a store to steal goods that they turn around and sell, often on online marketplaces.
That might not be the whole story.
It seems to be a term devised by the retail industry. It's not a legally defined crime. So it's a little bit in the eye of the beholder.
But retail heads say they've had to close some stores because of it. Earlier this year, the National Retail Federation put out a report saying organized retail crime is responsible for nearly half of the $94.5 billion estimated in inventory loss in 2021, up from $61.7 billion in 2019. And it asked Congress to broaden the definition of organized crime to encompass retail theft, which would raise the possible penalties for stealing products. But in November, the NRF retracted that claim, saying those numbers were based on mistaken data stemming from this 2021 testimony.
Organized retail crime represents a massive and growing threat to the tune of $45 billion a year.
Dugan did not respond to a request for comment, but in a statement to NBC News, the NRF acknowledged the retraction, but said it stood behind the claim that organized retail crime is a serious problem. Economist Trevor Wegener was one of the first to say the numbers don't add up.
And it boiled down to the claim that half of all retail inventory shrink
came from organized retail crime, which did not pass a sanity check internally.
He says that while organized retail crime is very much a real issue, it's likely responsible for a much smaller share of losses.
The data we have seen is consistent with organized retail crime still being responsible for about 5% of total retail inventory shrink.
The NRF's own numbers show external theft is responsible for less than half the industry's losses, and organized retail crime is a slice of that. And even Walgreens CFO admitted in a January earnings call that the company might have overstated the issue.
You know, maybe we cried too much last year.
Even analysts who think that theft is actually a risk, they may very well be using it either as an excuse for poorly merchandised stores that aren't as successful, maybe poorly staffed stores, poorly located stores.
Brick and mortar stores are dealing with staffing shortages and walkouts, competition from online retailers, and payouts from opioid crisis settlements. In a statement, CVS reiterated the problem of stealing, saying that incidents of theft in its stores have increased 30% since 2020. But many chains have doubled down on loss prevention measures that make it harder, not easier, for customers to buy products.
Now, the products that we buy every day are not easily accessible.
Something even as simple as like deodorant or hand soap, a lot of times that's behind a glass.
So you have to go through someone with a key to open up a case.
Now some customers turning to delivery services like Capsule, Amazon, and Instacart to bring medicines and groceries straight to their doors.
I think online definitely makes it easier. All of these measures just add friction to the process, and I think there does become a certain point where it's not worth it anymore.
But some say in-person shopping is worth the hassle.
Just the convenience of being able to go into a store, it's kind of unmatched by anything else.
While others say these anti-theft measures have led to a diminished customer experience, retail analysts are still bullish.
If you look at overall sales, they're actually up both brick and mortar and on e-commerce.
Brick and mortar still on a solid foundation.
And Christine Romans is joining me now. I got to tell you, Christine, I cannot buy a toothbrush.
I know.
Without getting it unlocked behind that glass case. But I'm wondering, is this actually a problem? Or is it not?
The retail experience has definitely changed, right? Is it a problem? Yes. Organized retail crime is a problem. You've seen those videos. Right. Those things really happen. But how much of a problem, and what is the share of organized retail crime in the overall shrinkage of some of these companies? One study found, and this is so interesting to me, that shoplifting, that retail crime is up first half of 2023 compared with 2019. But when you take out New York City, it's actually down. So it's a mixed picture across the country. And the industry, these experts are saying maybe the industry is attributing other reasons to organized retail crime than the actual event itself. It's just fascinating. Not good numbers.
Real quick on this, though, we're calling it organized. Who's organizing it?
Well, there's all kinds of after markets for selling this stuff. So the idea is that there are bands of criminals who are getting together, even sometimes hiring people, homeless people sometimes, to steal this stuff so they can sell it. They can sell it online later.
That is fascinating. Christine Romans for us. Thank you, Christine. Appreciate it. That wraps up this hour, everybody. Coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.